without further ado, I'd love to introduce Sanjay Jegatheesan. Sanjay is the director and head brewer at Lion City Meadery in Singapore. Welcome, Sanjay.
Hi, thanks for having me today.
How's things? I guess to kickstart, the real question on everyone's mind every time we have a conversation like this is, how are you? How are things going right now with the circuit breaker measures in Singapore?
Great. I'm keeping safe, keeping sane, which is harder than it sounds. Cooking a lot more these days. Doing a lot more small batch R&D from my home as well. Yeah.
What's some of the interesting small batch R&D you're working on right now?
We've been toying with the idea of having meats that are more savory than sweet.
Okay.
Or dry. So we've got a couple of wacky stuff that is fermenting away. Don't know if it's going to work, but that's the whole point of R&D to try it out and see what happens.
And I mean, you're talking about making mead at home, which is really interesting, right? I mean, I had only really drunk mead. I'd never really thought about making mead. I mean, for the audience and for people who are joining today who maybe aren't so familiar with mead, who are new to mead, or maybe don't really know that much about it, I mean, what actually is it? I mean, how do you define mead? Dive into it for us. Just help give us the primer on what it is.
So mead by itself is an alcoholic category, right? You've got wine, you've got beer, you've got spirits, and mead is a category of its own. The defining factor for beer in that sense is that the fermentable sugars has to come from malt or wheat. And in wine, it comes from grapes. And for mead, a minimum of 51% of the fermentable sugars has to come from honey. So basically, mead is an alcoholic product that is fermented via honey. Or we ferment honey, basically, to create mead.
So is it closer to a wine or closer to a beer?
So the thing about mead is it's really interesting. The spectrum for it is amazing. What we do is pretty much what we call a beer style mead, which is a sessionable mead, or traditionally called a session mead or hydromel, and that starts as low as 4%. Right, but on the other end of the spectrum, you've got your traditional meads, which are 12, 14, 18%, and recently, I think sometime last year, another small batch R&D that we did was we actually pushed a mead up to 40%.
How did that taste?
It was good. The guys who tried it, so it was thick, it was syrupy, it was sweet, and the sugar actually masked the taste of the alcohol. So the only hint that you had that the ABV was higher than normal was when you took a shot, because we were pouring it out as shots. The back of your throat felt a little warm. That was it. So we were pouring out shots at an event for free, and we were just giving stuff away for free, just to gauge reactions. And let's just say that it was a really fun night.
Nice. A few fuzzy memories. I'm sure. Is that done commonly? Mead being served in shots? I've never heard of it before.
No. So traditional mead would be like a wine. You serve it in a wine glass. Like for us, beer meads, we serve it as in a glass or through the bottle or from the bottle itself directly.
And that's really interesting, right? Because you're talking about the tradition around mead, and I mean, I know that from our discussions and from talking about hearing more about what Lion City, I should say, Lion City Meadery, and what you guys have been doing in terms of your marketing tactics and your story. I do understand that gaming and mythology have played some part in your mead enthusiasm.
Oh yes. So I've been a gamer for, I don't know, as long as I can remember. Since primary school, I started gaming. Primary school, I got into Magic the Gathering, trading card game. Later on in secondary school, I discovered Dungeons and Dragons. And then from there, computer games came in. You're talking about Witcher, you're thinking about Baldur's Gate, you're thinking, and all this mythology, RPGs, and all of that. the one thing that they always drank in those was mead, right? And the other thing that I really got into, but this came a bit later in life, probably when I was in my early 20s, it was Norse mythology, right? I really got into Norse mythology, and with that, again, mead was always mentioned. And if you read Beowulf, it's in there as well.
You're a man after my heart talking about Beowulf.
Yeah, so from then, there's this. So the thing was that I've always kind of just fallen in love with this whole idea of mythology and all that, and mead has always been a constant part of it. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting because I grew up in New Zealand, right, where mythology, Western mythology, Norse mythology is actually taught in school to some degree. I mean, it's not a huge part of the curriculum. And obviously,
Okay.
like you, I grew up gaming as well, right? I mean, Baldur's Gate was a really eye-opening moment for me around the potential of transferring tabletop gaming onto a computer, onto an electronic device to kind of really, to me, capture that feeling. But back to what you were saying about that passion for Norse mythology. I mean, what was your, in Singapore? That's not necessarily the most common thing. I mean, was gaming and Dungeons and Dragons the kind of the vector into that?
Yeah, I think that was kind of the gateway, from that, and then into like pirates and Vikings, and then from Vikings into Norse mythology. I think that's kind of how it flowed along all the way. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, and that's great. And I mean, it's so interesting hearing that. It's not a common experience hearing someone getting into the whole making alcohol just through gaming and mythology. It's such a fascinating start point. I mean, the funny thing was when we were first talking, I remember we kind of had this same moment where we had the same experience with mead around why we tried it. And I know that your first taste of mead was in London in 2013, but maybe you can share, how you were feeling, and when you saw mead on the menu, what was your initial reaction?
So, like I've been saying, it's always been part of gaming. It's always been part of my life. I've always heard about mead. But up till that point, up to that trip to London, to me, mead was fictional, right? It was just a drink that existed in books, in games, and that was it. So I went to London, and we were in this bar, and I was looking through the menu, and they had mead. And I'm like, all right, so does this actually exist, or is it just someone naming their product after a fictional drink in games and movies and stuff like that? So ordered it, tasted it, and it was like nothing I've ever tasted before. Wasn't like any other beer, wasn't like any other wine. It was just unique. So, I went back after that and Googled and realized that, oh crap, mead is the actual thing. This is not fictional. This is real, right? This drink actually does exist. And from then it became a whole obsession of, how do I make it? It started out with how can I find it? Where can I find it? And I realized that back in 2013 in Singapore, there was no chance of getting a hands on mead at all. And so since I couldn't get it locally, it came to how can I then make it? Searched a couple of recipes, seemed simple enough, tried it out, and that just became an obsession that lasted. Well, it still goes on to today.
And that's interesting. I mean, like, such a cool starting point, right? I love that. And I remember when I first saw mead in a bar. I feel like it was it wasn't in Singapore. Maybe it was in Australia about 10 years ago. And I remember feeling that exact same thing. I remember seeing it and thinking, wow, that's like something out of Baldur's Gate or an RPG game, and immediately ordering it, right? As you said, capturing that intrigue, being like, what is this? Like, isn't this that? And I mean, it was funny, thinking that it was fake. It was the same for me. I thought, oh, this is some gimmick by the restaurant to try and like maybe some geek is running it and it's trying to appeal. A bit like how in Harry Potter fans, they create butterbeer, right? I thought it was something like that. So no, it's funny we had that shared. I definitely know that experience and know that feeling. It's really funny. So, I mean, that journey you've taken, right, from that first sip, that first wow moment of being like, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
Launching Lion City Meadery, you know, which you run and
Yep.
you make mead there in 2018. I mean, that journey, like tell us a bit about it. I mean, you were saying this deep obsession,
So
falling into it. Like, what were you kind of grinding over pots and pans, making concoctions in your kitchen? I mean, tell us a bit about it.
it wasn't so much that similar to that. So again, we couldn't find meat in Singapore, so I decided to make my own. And the first batch I made was completely bad. It was so bad that it went down the sink, right?
Oh no!
Like it couldn't even be drunk. So then I went like, all right, let's go back, because it's three ingredients: it's honey, it's water, it's yeast. That's it, nothing more than that. So where I started to figure out where I went wrong, got in a fermentation fridge, so I could temperature control my ferments, and it was just experiment. And I think after about 3-4 years, I pretty much had a decent product, something that I was proud to bottle and give away to my friends. And then a friend of mine who I've known for more than 10 years, Justin, who's my business partner, comes along, and I found out that he likes mead as well. He enjoys drinking mead as well. I'm like, dude, so I make mead on the side. You like drinking mead. Why not we make this a business? Right? And that was, we started that conversation in July 2018, I think. And or June or July 2018. And in August 2018, we registered the company. We started brewing our first batch in September. And by December 2018, we were distributing.
And that journey of, I mean, around professionalizing, your production of mead, right, from it being something that's fun, that's for friends, through to making something that you could proudly put out into the media in Singapore. And I know you guys have gotten a lot of media attention in Singapore, which is awesome. I'm sure that's been a really positive. I hope that's been positive as part of your mead crusade. But that journey around making the mead was really eye-opening. Like when we first spoke, that production process, you were talking, and I was really, honestly, I was quite naive about it. I'd assumed maybe you're working with some beehives in Malaysia, and you were getting the honey in, and you were kind of cooking it up in some like I don't know, like an abandoned office building or something like that in Changi, or in to us. But when you actually were sharing, you guys actually worked with an apiary in Australia.
Yep.
I mean, maybe you can share with us. I mean, like, you've talked about what mead is, but that whole story that you shared with me around why you work with an apiary in Australia in terms of the quality of the flora, in terms of whether it matters how hardworking the bees are. Can you tell everyone a bit about that? I thought that was really interesting.
So mead, in essence, it's just three ingredients: it's honey, it's water, it's yeast. Yeast is something that we use a commercial strain. So the only control I have is what strain I use and what esters it gives to the finished product. That's the only control I have. Water, we pretty much have control over it because we can reverse osmosis it, remineralize what we need to. But the key ingredient where all your flavors come from would be your honey. We did think about using local honey from Singapore, but when we tasted the quality of the local honey, we felt that it was lacking. And it's through no fault of the beekeepers in Singapore. It's just the fact that Singapore is hot, it's humid. We don't have fantastic flora, and therefore we're not going to get fantastic honeys because it's just too hot, too humid. You don't have good plants, you don't have good flowers. You're not going to get a good product at the end of the day. The other issue and the other limitation with getting local honey was that the local beekeepers couldn't meet our demand. The supply wasn't enough for us. To put things into perspective, every batch we brew, we use about 1.6 tons of honey. So locally, that couldn't be done. So we started to look around and we said, where else can we get good quality honey? Because of the temperate, because of the climate and the quality of the flowers, and close enough. So Australia became a possible location. So we went to Australia. We went and we looked at a couple of apiaries. We talked to them, and this one that we are working with impressed us the most. The quality of the honey was good. The beekeeping was ethical.
Can you hang on? So those two things are interesting. I want you to continue after this, but
yeah, sure.
What does ethical beekeeping mean?
All right. So with ethical beekeeping is these guys with the hives, they only harvest about 30% of the honey. The remaining 70% of the honey is left for the bees. They don't overwork the bees. So there are apiaries who leave out jars of sugar water along the way so that the bees can work harder than they normally would, so that they would fly further than they normally would. But with these guys, everything is kept very natural. They let the bees do what the bees want. They don't overwork the bees. They don't stimulate the bees to do more. They don't stimulate the bees to produce more honey than they normally would. And again, when the honey is produced, they only take 30%, and the remaining 70% is left for the bees, because the bees need that 70% during winter to feed themselves and the young. So
wow, that's super cool. I think that's probably new to everyone listening, I imagine, if they're not a hardcore honey enthusiast. So that went into your, that selection process, you picking the apiary around, the ethical beekeeping, the quality of the honey. I mean, once you picked the apiary, once you started working with them, tell us, I remember you were sharing that they actually haven't they got a full-time honey blender and taster?
So they have a honey blender in house. So when we were first looking at, when we decided that we're going to work with them, one of the things we asked for was a single varietal honey. So I wanted to work with a single strain of honey, and just use that strain of honey for each batch that we brew. But they came around and said that, look, it's a great idea, but we don't advise it, because season to season, your quality of the honey and your yield of the honey will be different. Because when the weather changes, flower changes, the bees don't work as hard, or the bees work harder, whichever way. And because of that, the quality will change season to season. And if you want to do single varietal, you can, but we can't guarantee that every batch will be of the same quality. So one way that we circumvented that issue was we decided to blend. So we took single varietal honey, and we took a bit of wildflower. We blended it to get a flavor profile that we were comfortable with.
No, it's so interesting hearing that. It's almost like blending whiskey, right?
Yep.
Or like,
Yep.
It's almost like how wine, it's such a unique production process. By the way, what is the correct way of saying it? Is it making mead or brewing mead?
Well, I guess both is acceptable, because when you make mead, you're brewing as well. Technically,
Right.
you are brewing, yeah.
Oh, cool. Because I'd seen you were head brewer, and then I was worried I was going to make a mistake around. One of the things, everyone, that I made some mistakes on when I was talking with Sanjay, I accidentally was I kept on saying beer instead of mead, which is an important thing I need to learn. It's important to learn the difference between them. Well, look at that, and that whole journey of building that perfect blend,
Mm-hmm.
and putting it into bottles, building your brand, and building the whole idea of Lion City Meadery. Since then, once you first started getting it into Singapore, what's the reception been like? How have Singaporeans received this new beverage that many of them hadn't experienced before?
It's been, I'm not going to lie, and I'll say that it's been challenging. When we first came in, it was a case of people who knew what mead was, knew what it was, and there was like no in between in that sense. And we had a hard time convincing people that this is a legit product, that this is a legit alcoholic product. And I think one of the common misconceptions was like what you said. Everyone assumes it's beer, especially when ours comes in a small 330 ml bottle. Looks like a beer bottle. It's carbonated as well. You pour it out, you see the carbonation, and people instantly assume that it's beer, and they go like, "Oh no, I don't drink beer." I'm like, "No, but this is not beer," And the other thing is, so that's the first stage, getting people to understand that it's not beer. Second part of it would be then you explain to them what mead is, that it's made from honey. And then they have this complete misconception that because it's made from honey, it's going to be extremely sweet, which is not always the case. So those two were pretty much the big challenges that we've had. But generally, the reception that we've got has been good, I guess. We are converting people into meat drinkers. We are getting the
Awesome.
exposure. Yeah.
And I mean that conversion process. How does it normally? I mean, you said people think it's too sweet. I mean, how do you run us through like the hand-to-hand combat? You know, I'm convincing someone to say it. You know, how do you convince them to try your mead?
Straightforward. We pour them a sample. You know, let your taste buds decide for you. We pour you a sample. If you like it, you like it. If you don't like it, you know, we move on. It's fine. But we want you to taste the product, and we want you to make your decision based on how the product tastes and not what you think.
And I mean, on that, right? And I mean, on that, breaking through those preconceptions and kind of going back to one of the topics we talked about earlier about your passion for gaming, for RPGs. One of the stories that I've heard about Lion City Meadery that I thought was really cool was how you guys built, and for the geeks on the call, and I am one myself, this is something that sounded pretty cool. You guys actually took over a gaming convention.
Yep.
And you built a real life tavern, like something out of an RPG or out of an old school Dungeons and Dragons computer game. I mean, can you tell us a bit about how that happened, the logic behind it as well, and how it was received?
So October last year, there's this gaming convention in Singapore called GameStart Asia, and we decided that we wanted to go in, and we wanted to take over the entire F&B area. Right, because we knew that there would be tabletop gamers playing board games, card games. We knew that there would be Warhammer players. We knew that there'd be players playing Dungeons and Dragons. And to me, mead kind of ties in with all of that. So we decided to take the area right next to the tabletop gamers and convert that into a tavern with food, with the bar serving drinks and everything. And I'll share a photo of what we did. So if you look at your screen, this was what we did. So this was the bar area, and this was where like the sitting area and like the food stalls, and yeah. So basically, that's what we did. We took over the area, converted it into like sort of like what you said, a tavern where people could come, take a break, get a drink, get food, recharge themselves, go back to the convention. We had runners, and we knew that once the tabletop players got into their games, they weren't going to leave, right? Like if I play Dungeons and Dragons, I'm stuck there for 3-4 hours. We're not moving. So we had runners go take orders, come back, grab the food or the drinks that they wanted, and then run it back to the tables for them. So we were doing table service for the tabletop gamers as well.
And I mean, what was the reception like amongst these? You know, did it add to the kind of ambience of the players of these games that they were drinking, something like a drink that they could find in their Dungeons and Dragons rule books?
Yeah, I'm sure it did. I'm sure it added to the whole experience. That this drink, and I think that with a lot of them, it would have been the same way that I felt in 2013, where I went like, this is not fictional. This is a actual drink, right? I've been hearing about it in games and books and all that. I actually have a taste of it now. So I do feel that it added to the whole atmosphere.
That's super cool. No, that's such a smart play. And I think some of the people listening in, I know, run F&B businesses and or more generally are involved in the marketing or promotion of food and beverage and particularly craft beer. And I think the fact that you reached out, you translated your own experience and your own passion into an audience of people that, were similar. I think that's so smart, right? I think the courage that you guys had to do that, to take over a gaming convention, where you honestly, like my first assumption would be there, sorry to say, but my assumption would be people wouldn't really be drinking. So the fact that you guys broke that barrier down and were able to reach that really unique audience, I'm sure it meant a lot to them.
Yeah, I think it also came down to, making sure that your marketing is on point, that people will drink if you give them the right product and how you sell that product to them. And I think that's what we did with GameStart last year.
And I mean, one of the interesting things I saw in the photos, and moving on to something that I'm really passionate about, and I think we don't talk about enough in Asia, is pairing, right? Pairing out different alcohols, pairing beer, pairing spirits, pairing wine with Asian food.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like way too often we rely on some boring bullshit Westerners perspective on saying, okay, you must, you can pair this wine with Thai food. And it's like, you wouldn't say that about one wine you can pair with Italian cuisine. It's like it's a huge range of flavors, of tastes. How have you found the process? And I'd love to hear, your experiences of pairing mead with Singapore cuisine.
So,
what are some of the best combinations you've tried?
So pairings is something that we do frequently. It's quite surprising. So we've done a couple of events where it's a dinner menu which pairs with the mead. And so, for example, like our classic mead, it's crisp, it's refreshing, it's clean, it's a little bit tart. And we found that works with anything that is oily and greasy, because it cuts it cuts through all that grease, it scrubs your palate, and then you're ready for more. With the Hibiscus Blueberry, that's a really dry mead that is very similar to a red wine in terms of taste profile, without the body. So I would describe it as a very young Pinot Noir without any body whatsoever. So in that essence, we pair it the same way that you would pair a red wine, a Pinot Noir, with red meat, so lamb, beef. That works perfectly. And then with the spice is interesting. So the spice, we use cinnamon, we use cloves, and we use star anise. And depending on which culture you're from, it reminds you of different things. Right? We've had people tell us that it reminds them of chai, which was the original inspiration. We've had people say that it reminds them of smoked ham. It reminded them of Christmas ham. It reminds them of Christmas pudding, mulled wine. So it really depends on what culture you're coming from. You will find a parallel, because cinnamon cloves and star anise are pretty much used in any cuisine. So pairing that is actually simple. We always say that the spice pairs really well with Indian food, because it's the same spices. It pairs well with ham. A Christmas roast, a Sunday roast, it goes well. It pairs well with any pork-based dish. So like your roast pork, your braised pork, they all work really well with spice meat as well.
Does it work well with suyok? Like Chinese style pork belly?
Yeah. Suyok works brilliantly with the spice meat.
That sounds good. You're making me want to try it now. The next time I'm in Singapore. That's so cool. And I think it's great how people find those analogies within their own culture, right? And they find that translation goes, that pairing is also kind of culture dependent, because I guess that is one of the challenges in Singapore, right? Is that Singapore is such a diverse place. Sometimes it can be challenging getting that taste appeal right and getting that balance right. And in terms of reaching out to drinkers in Singapore, now, obviously besides COVID, right? Yep. How have you guys found distribution? If you've been able to start winning over drinkers, what's it like being with, is your strategy, how does your strategy work? Are you guys mostly now planning on selling direct to consumer, maybe through online, or are you mostly going to be focused on offline? And if so, are bar owners receptive to mead? Do they get it?
So one of the things that Justin and myself agreed on when we started LCM was that we would never do direct to consumer. We would always be a strict business to business entity, for a very simple reason. When we first started, we were two guys with no background in the industry, right? We were completely unknown. Nobody in the industry knew who we were. Very few people in the industry knew what mead was. But our retailers, our first few retailers that came aboard, took a chance on us. They believed in us. They believed in our product, and they pushed our product for us. I'll be doing them a very big disservice if I went and sold direct to consumers and start competing with them indirectly as well. So we made a business decision that, look, no matter what happens, we support our retailers, we support our distributors, and we work with them and them only.
Well, that's cool. I mean, is that? I mean, how has that relationship been under COVID? I mean, are you guys? I mean, I know it's challenging for everyone and it's a nightmare. For viewers who aren't in Singapore, it's obviously Singapore is facing similar lockdown measures. So it's called a circuit breaker. I mean, do you think in the next few months are you guys going to reevaluate that strategy that you started off with?
I don't think we have. I don't think we are, and I don't think we will. Most of our retailers have actually pivoted and started doing online sales as well. So
right.
for a lot of them, the online sales is moving. A lot of the bars that also do food are also doing online food and drink pairing. So like one of our retailers, Impact Company, they do food and meat or beer delivery. So, drop them a text, choose what food you want, what beers or what meat you want. And I think for a small, reasonable delivery fee, they deliver it to you. On other retailers like Temple Cellars, for example, who is a bottle shop.
Great spot, great bar.
So Temple Cellars is fully online. So they're doing online bottles. They're doing, I think, like package deals. If you buy 6 bottles, you get X amount off. So with them moving stock or with them moving sales channels in this direction, there really is no need or there's really no excuse for us to start selling direct to consumers because our retailers are still moving for us. Our retailers are still pushing our stock. So, and I think beyond anything, this is the time where we really need to support. I mean, I could cut them out and go direct to the consumer and I will survive. I knew I will survive. But at the end of this whole circuit breaker, at the end of this whole situation, they might not. And if they don't survive, long-term wise, it's not going to be good for us.
Oh, that's awesome. And I think that solidarity is great. Because you're right. I think that's the underside of that whole go online, sell D2C is potentially you can really burn those relationships, but also damage that whole fabric in Singapore, right? Which is so important to have those because people like Temple Cellars are doing such a good job. I mean, I first tried your meat in Temple Cellars. My friend Keith, who's actually in the conference now, he actually passed me. He said someone's making meat in Singapore, and I said, "Oh God, that's gonna." I'm not in my head. I was like, "Is that going to be any good?" I mean, I've never heard of that before, and I tried it. I was like, "Wow, this is actually really nice." And that was Temple Cellars, and they were so supportive. I remember the team at Temple Cellars talking about you guys, and this was last year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's so cool that you guys are staying on the side of retailers and not giving them up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, go on. Sorry, you were saying something.
No. So I think, really at this point, I think we really need to support our partners more than anything else, more than any other time. Right now is the time to support our partners.
Yeah, and I mean, look, as we obviously move out of COVID, I know this is not the right time to be making grandiose plans. But right now, I understand you kind of need to get over to Australia, don't you, to produce the next batch. I mean, what is the future looking like for you guys right now in that sense? I mean, where are you? What are your movements in the coming few months? Do you think will you be able to continue to produce in Australia and export without going there, or is that something you'd rather not do?
At this point, we don't really know, and I don't think anyone has an idea. It really depends on how the global situation improves and how it happens. Melbourne is still in lockdown, so the brewery itself is closed. If the brewery is allowed to reopen, there is a possibility of us brewing remotely, where I still send my recipe over, they brew it, and then on a weekly basis or fortnightly basis, they bottle a sample and they ship it back to Singapore, and I can taste and I can give my comments and work stuff out. So it's still possible, but that is not ideal. But if that's the only way around it and that's something that we have to do, then we live with it, and that's something that we have to do.
I mean, yeah, I do think that those kind of relationships, those kind of not relationships, those kind of arrangements, unfortunately, are going to be more common. That is one challenge. You know, we've we've been hearing from lots of other people who are having to do some kind of remote brewing, as you said, kind of surreptitiously send a bottle
Yeah.
through airmail, just so that they can try it and taste it out. Okay, cool. Well, look, that's kind of really, I guess it's really interesting to hear where you've come from, with all that, the whole journey, starting with Dungeons and Dragons, gaming, mythology, all the way through to taste, through to bringing the Lion City Meadery to life, with your partner. And obviously hearing about the future, I know it is a challenging time. We actually had a few questions from the audience, which is now probably a good time that we can jump in.
Yeah.
Eugene said that he wants mead in the Philippines. Have you guys got any plans, Sanjay, for export to the Philippines?
So this year was supposed to be the year that we started exporting, that we started exploring export. We were planning to fly around the region to talk to people, but things happen, so we're all stuck here. I would like to get our meat in the Philippines as well. So it's gonna be a while before that happens. But I hope it's gonna be sooner than later.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the positive thing on that side is that it does seem like, if the borders, I mean, it seems like freight and the borders are still kind of staying open around that. And obviously there's the demand for it if people like Eugene are asking for it. So maybe Manila can be one of your first export markets.
Oh, definitely, for sure.
And Jun Flores, hey Jun, great to have you here. Jun's a craft beer stalwart in the Philippines. Jun asks, how about the cost of the product? Is it higher than beer? Now, obviously, you don't feel like you have to release trade secrets, but it would be good to understand.
So yes, the cost of the product will always be higher. Honey is not a cheap product to begin with. And with the global shortage of honey now, it looks like the cost of honey is going to go up as well. So yeah, it's still going to be the price of the product will increase. We are looking at ways to bring it down. We are looking at ways to go around it to keep costs manageable.
That's interesting. You said there's the global shortage of honey. Is this partly because of the whole because of climate change?
It's climate change, it's global warming, it's deforestation. Bees are losing their habitat. If we talk about even more recent times, the recent Australian forest fires, that wiped out a lot of hives, that wiped out a lot of bees. And a shortage of honey comes from a shortage of bees. It also comes from people thinking that bees are pests. I think that there was a report that last year or the year before in Brazil, they killed more than like 3 million bees because they used pesticides. So the numbers are shocking. Yeah, and I think people, the next part of education is people need to realize that we need the bees more than they need us, right? We need bees to pollinate. We need bees to help flowers grow. Bees do a lot more than just give us honey. They carry pollen all over the place. They populate the earth with more flora, and that in turn gives us, gives the animals things to feed on. It's a whole cycle.
I mean, in the world of mead, I mean, is this something that mead brewers? I mean, obviously you're very passionate about this, which is awesome, and it's a cause. I think even as a layman like myself, I know how important, and I think I've heard a lot about the kind of disappearances of bees. Well, not really disappearing. Really, as humans, we're killing them off, right? This is what we're doing. I mean, is the mead industry globally working alongside hives, working alongside the apiaries? Is there some kind of fight back?
I think the majority of us are. And it's for a very simple reason. If we run out of honey, we run out of bees, we don't have a raw material to make a product from. So it's in our interest to make sure that, the bee population thrives and the bee population continues to grow.
That's so interesting. It's so crazy how the process of making an alcoholic drink kind of gets you into this whole world of and obviously, yeah, I mean, I can't imagine not having honey. That's another thing as well that I think. Actually, I'll ask you a question after we've gone through these. That's one of the last ones I wanted to talk to you about your taste, your honey. But John asked another question, which is interesting. He was saying, can you carbonate your mead, sparkling mead? Most of the mead I know is a bit like wine.
Yeah, so with the wine meats, those are the traditional. Well, I want to say the traditional meats. Those are 12% and above in terms of ABV. For us, our meats are like 5.5%, and our meats are carbonated, and we force carbonate. So it's just like force carbonating your beer while you're brewing. We force carbonate our meats. It's simple as that. And
so the uncarbonated mead, which is more like wine, and is it a subset, a different style of mead?
It's a different style of mead. So mead again is very versatile. Like I said, 4% up to 12%. Can you have a 12% sparkling mead? You can, but I feel that personally, at 12%, when you carbonate your mead, you're gonna lose a lot of the nuances of flavors that you can pick up.
Right. Yeah. I guess it's the same with beer, right? I mean, when you're talking about when a beer is ultra highly carbonated at 12%, and again, I'm not saying, I'm sure there are exceptions to this. It just doesn't, to me, that doesn't seem super right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I guess those flavors become more subtle, and you don't want to kind of wipe them out through carbonation. But that's interesting. I mean, Nicholas Lim asked a great question actually around what are the limitations in terms of flavors you want to create, and around does the blend of honey, depending on the blend of honey, does it kind of impose a different flavor, or can you kind of use remix the honey?
a lot of the honey, a lot of the flavor of the final product comes from the honey. So in terms of our core series, the blend that we use, the proprietary blend that we use, that doesn't change. Because we want consistency. We want the product to taste as it should each time we make a batch. But we also work on seasonals, and our seasonals are all one-off brews. We brew it once, we release it. If it sells out, it sells out. We don't remake or we don't rebrew any of our seasonal flavors. And with that, I have a lot more versatility because I don't really have to care about consistency in honey anymore. I just got to make sure that the honey that I'm using gives me the right flavor that I want. And I make a batch using that honey. And I don't have to worry, a year later, can I get the same batch of honey? It doesn't really matter to me at that point.
Yeah, and I've always felt like that fixation on consistency is probably, if you're smart about positioning your product as a seasonal product, I think people are fine with that, right?
Yep.
I mean, I don't think people are going to go, oh, that mead tasted different a year ago. It's like, well, dude, I mean, that's the point of a seasonal product. It changes, right?
Exactly.
And does that appeal? I mean, does that appeal to Singaporeans? Do they think that's cool about having different seasonal products?
So we've just launched our first seasonal a month ago, I think. Yeah, we launched our first seasonal a month ago. Within a month, we've sold more than half of what we brewed.
Wow! Even now.
So and like I've always said, the seasonals, once they sell out, they sell out. We will not rebrew any of the seasonals. So yeah.
That's awesome. Hey, congratulations, Sanjay.
Thank you.
I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, that's so cool that you guys are able to drive that kind of sales volume.
Yep.
In these terrible times. That's awesome. That's great. And so, look, I think, okay, cool. Now, Nicholas has posted that question as well. There was one more comment from, I saw Anand. Hey, Anand, great to have you here. Anand said he needs to stock up. He just finished. So Sanjay already, Beer Asia Live has generated us some demand.
Well, Anand knows where to buy them from. He's got the list.
Nice. And by the way, if anyone's interested, where to find Sanjay's mead, I'll post the link to the Lion City Meadery Facebook page under the Beer Asia live stream after this, just so that anyone can look it up. If you're in Singapore and you're thirsty for some hot honey, some cold some cold honey beverages on a hot Sunday afternoon. The last question was from Eugene, who was saying, "Go Mead, we need a new taste of beer in Asia. He will support to bring it here in the Philippines." So that's great, Sanjay. You've got some new fans in the Philippines.
Yay! So yeah, we definitely want to bring our meat regional and eventually worldwide. And like I said, the plans were for us to really aggressively start looking at export this year, but plans have changed. So we'll depending on how the whole global situation changes again, we will definitely start making inroads to all the different countries within the region to begin with.
But look, it seems like, I mean, obviously this whole situation is making everyone change their positioning and slow down a bit. I mean, I saw a quote from who's the guy from Alibaba? That really famous Jack Ma.
Yeah.
My friend shared it. It's one of those things. Maybe it was bullshit. Maybe it was just a random screenshot. It was attributed to Jack Ma, and it said in 2020, don't dream too much, don't plan too much. Just if you survive 2020. You're a success, and I think the fact that you guys are still selling beer and not beer, sorry, meat, I should say. God, even I'm getting mixed up. It's funny actually. I'm just looking at the comments on our Facebook Live, and we've got 3 separate comments of people all saying that the Chrysanthemum Mead rocks. It's yummy. Time to order more. I need more chrysanthemum. So that looks like you've got a winning product there.
Yeah, I mean it's like I said, it's our first seasonal, and it's something that I've been wanting to do for quite a bit, and I'm really happy that we pulled it off. I'm really happy that we did what we did and what we achieved with it. Yeah.
Oh, that's super cool. And I mean, actually, have you got a photo? I remember on your background you had a photo of the bottle design.
Yeah, just give me a minute. Let me pull it.
It was quite unique.
1 second. Let me find it.
And so the chrysanthemum, the actual label, if I haven't got it in front of me, but it's in Chinese characters. It's in Hanzi, right?
Yeah.
And I know that is there a story behind that flavor?
Yeah.
For Singaporeans.
So this is the bottle, and the Chinese characters on the bottle say chrysanthemum. That's what it is. And then English below it, you will see Chrysanthemum Mead. So this brings back childhood memories for, I would say, a lot of Singaporeans. Back when we were kids, if we were having what Chinese grandparents would call heatiness, where you've got too much heat in your body, Chinese grandmothers would make chrysanthemum tea. And what they would do is they take dried chrysanthemum flowers, they would boil it in water till, pretty much they would overboil it in water till it becomes really, really bitter. And then in order to offset that bitterness, to make it more palatable, they add in a ton of rock sugar. So you get that sweet, bitter balance. And with that in mind, that's what we did with our mead as well. So we brewed 3,000 liters for this. And for 3,000 liters, we used 150 kilos of dried chrysanthemum. Brewed that.
Wow.
Yep. So we made a tea out of that. And then we added in the honey and we did the fermentation as we would. So, it's got that herbal, earthy, bitter note, but there is also that balance of that floral honey sweetness to it.
I mean, that's so cool how that balance came from that beautiful Singaporean origin story, right? Of just of grandma making that kind of herbal tonic almost. To get rid of heatiness. That's super cool. And have you gotten feedback from people who just instinctively get that?
Oh yeah,
when they try it?
Definitely. So, a lot of people who've had it have just gone like, this brings back childhood memories. Like, you are playing with my memories. That's what you're doing.
I mean, it's funny because like what you guys are doing is so cool in that sense. And, I think we're starting to see some other brands in Singapore in the craft beer space tap into those traditional flavors, that kind of tie back to history. Like, was it the Singapore Beer Project that did the sour plum?
Yep, the sour plum.
Yep. Gamsiang tea, right? Yeah, that was this is like almost belongs in that same list of like brands that have really tapped into that classic.
Yeah, and I think that, childhood memories are things that we should cherish. And if I can make an alcoholic version of it, why not? If I can make something that we all enjoyed as a kid, and if I can make it for an adult, an adult version of it, then I think, it's always fun to try.
I mean, on that note, and on that kind of note around tapping into the Singapore tapping into childhood memories. I mean, what's next? In terms of, without giving up too much away in the R&D, are we going to get a Dungeons and Dragons themed mead anytime soon?
So what's next is the Chrysanthemum Mead is an actual series that we're doing. The Chrysanthemum was 1 out of 4, so there'll be 3 more in the series that will be coming up. And it all follows that herbal tea style of drink.
Cool.
That Singaporeans grew up with. So hopefully, depending on how the situation changes, we really hope to be able to push out the second seasonal by the end of this year, which means we will need to start brewing by September or so. So hopefully, situation clears up enough that we can start brewing in September, and then by December, we have the second seasonal. Otherwise, we'll look at it next year again and we'll reevaluate.
Yeah, look, I think just speaking for everyone to hope that things let's all hope. I think I, for one, hope that you're able to get over there to Melbourne and make some more delicious mead to follow in that sequence. But Sanjay, it's been so cool chatting to you. Look, guys, I think, before we wrap up the session, if anyone has any more comments or questions, feel free to jump in.
I think Keith has a question.
Oh, cool.
So Keith asked me if we brew locally. The answer is no. We brew in Australia, primarily because the raw ingredients is from Australia. We use 1.6 tons of honey each batch. It doesn't make sense to ship it into Singapore and brew it here. Economically, it's cheaper for me to fly there and we brew it there.
Yeah, no, and I think that honey as well. I mean, like one of the things before we wrap up, there was that fascinating thing we were talking about around your theory on the origin of honey, of mead. Yep. And about from when Norse, well, not necessarily the origin, but maybe how it became popular in Viking and Norse culture.
Yeah. We were thinking about it, and, like what we were mentioning the other day, if you look at history, if you look at all the different cultures, all the different civilizations, they all had their own version of mead. Across Asia, Europe, Africa, every civilization had their own version of mead. But the biggest perpetrators of mead, the biggest drinkers of mead, would probably be the Vikings. And we all know that Vikings were raiders, right? They raided England multiple times. And my theory, and this is purely my theory, I can't confirm if it's real or not, but they wouldn't have been able to bring beer with them because beer wouldn't survive the journey. And because they were raiding, to make beer, you needed wheat, you needed barley, stuff that needs to be grown. You can't grow them while you're on the ship. So what was easy to be harvested would probably be honey. And I felt that it didn't start as an alcoholic drink. They were just taking honey along with them in a barrel for sustenance because honey is food. But, on the journey to England, however long it took, however the many months that it took to sail from Norway to England, seawater would have gotten into the barrel. It would have gotten humid. Wood has natural yeast. And I think along the way, it just fermented. And by the time they reached England, it became alcoholic. And they would have drunk it and go like, oh, this makes me feel really, really good. And subconsciously, that just became mead. So I don't think they could explain why as well. They just knew that if they filled a barrel full of mead and they took it on a journey across the ocean, it would make them feel really good. So that's my theory of how mead came about within, the Vikings and stuff like that.
Yeah, because it was so interesting when we were chatting about, like the etymology and the history of words, right? and how the word mead, I think the origin of it, again, this is just my theory, it comes from Madhu in Sanskrit, which is an ancient Indian language, which is actually the origin language of Indo-European civilization, right? A lot of people don't realize Indian and European civilization is actually the same thing. It's just involved a lot of migration and traveling. And
Yep.
the interesting thing, just thinking about, we were talking, is how in Bahasa Malaysia and in Sanskrit, in languages that are influenced by Sanskrit, like it's also known as Malay in Singapore, Bahasa Melayu. In Bahasa Melayu, madu means honey. So, you get nasi biryani, madu, like honey biryani.
Yep.
And when you actually look at in Sanskrit and in older English, like taverns or next to kings' palaces that are called mead halls. And in Sanskrit, it was called madusal. And I thought that was super interesting, just realizing the connections that mead actually has this great historic resonance, right? In a way, and I think that's one of the reasons it's so exciting talking to you today, because I think mead is something that is actually, it seems like something really niche if you don't know about it. And the more you dive into it, you go, wow, this was actually pretty important for multiple civilizations. Yeah.
And if you actually look at like research papers and stuff like that, mead is actually widely acknowledged. They haven't proved it, but it's widely accepted and acknowledged to be the first alcoholic beverage in mankind's history.
Wow.
Like way before they found wine in Egypt, and way before they found beer, they actually found text on how to make mead. So it's been widely accepted that mead is the oldest alcoholic beverage in the world. And
wow, it makes sense in
yeah.
a way, right? It's quite, it's not, I'm not saying it's easy to make, but it's easy for someone to accidentally make as a first beverage and then kind of fall into it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. But then, back to what you said, if you look at it now and how many people actually know about it, I think somewhere along history, mead didn't become as sexy as it used to be. And for us, we're here to make mead sexy again. That's what we're doing.
Make mead great again, right? Oh, look, Sanjay, it's been such a pleasure chatting to you today. It's so interesting. Even just the brief talking about the history, your own story, the intersection of mythology with Singapore flavor, how you guys are making meads that are seasonal meads that tie back to the childhood of Singaporeans. It's so cool hearing what you guys have been up to at Lion City Meadery. And look, I for one really hope that, yourselves, like everybody else in the broader kind of craft beverage game, is able to weather the storm. And it sounds like you guys, I can see already on our Facebook page, so many fans of yours posting, saying how much they love your mead. So at least you guys have got a legion of dedicated fans.
We do, and we actually know a lot of them personally as well. Like, we've taken the effort to get to know them personally, and I can safely say that we love all of them too.
Oh, that's great. And I think that's always the recipe to a great brand, right? You've got that close connection. You don't see yourself as being a business and them being consumers. You see everyone as just fellow mead drinkers.
Yeah, we are a community. That's what it is.
So, Sanjay, again, thank you so much for joining the session of Beer Asia Live. I think we haven't got any more questions, so I guess we can wrap up there. And look, it's been a pleasure having you all join. Thanks in particular for the people who've joined through Zoom: Eugene, Jun, Kamal, Keith, Calvin, Nicholas, Carlo, Anand, Chris, Alejandro, and a couple more. It's been a pleasure. Thanks everyone also for joining through Facebook Live. It's been a pleasure having you guys here as well. I really, really hope you spread the word about Sanjay's mead. So Sanjay, again, just to reiterate, works and is the chief brewer or the master brewer, chief mead artist, head brewer at the Lion City Meadery. And I'll put a Facebook link under the video after this, so that we can, so that you guys can like his Facebook page, and go and check out some of his meads. And hopefully, for those of you outside of Singapore, you'll have a chance, maybe end of this year, early next year, to sample some of Sanjay's delicious meads in your markets. So again, Sanjay, thanks for your time today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
Definitely, and look, I'm really, really looking forward to having a few meads with you at maybe even at Temple Cellars
For
hopefully
sure.
by the end of this year. That would
For
be
sure.
it'd be great to catch up in person.
Yep. Let me know when you're in town, and we'll definitely go out for a drink.
Sounds great. All right, Sanjay,
All
thanks
right.
again. Thanks
Thank you
everyone.
so much.
Tune into the next session of Beer Asia Live. Hope to see you again soon.
All
Thanks
right.
everybody.
Cheers. Bye.